One memory of my dad that I hold very dear is we went to Portugal when I was probably about 12 or so, and he didn't have any real plans. He never didn't book any accommodation or anything like that, and we ended up just getting in my grandfather's car and driving down to the south of Portugal spontaneously, and basically looking for a place to stay. We found this small fishing village, and my dad, being who he was, just went and kind of spoke to everyone in the street, and found this old lady that he chatted to and got to know, and she had a spare room, so we stayed in that. And that was all kind of through his extroverted nature and his love of exploring. So I think that really sums up who he was for me. Just really loved to go and see new things and meet new people and find interesting things to do. I think I only really started to understand the impact my dad's work had on other people when I was in my probably early teens, just after he'd started Studio 77. We kind of joked in our family that you couldn't go out with my dad just to do something simple, because there would be loads of people that he would stop and chat to. And I think that started, making me realize that he really had an influence on people, and his work did as well. And then the second time that I really got to see just how big that influence was after he passed away, and the amount of kind of outpouring of love and support, and getting all of these anecdotes from people sharing messages with myself and our family about times that they'd been photographed by him, or works that they'd seen, or exhibitions they went to that really inspired them. My dad always said that he picked up a camera for the first time when he was 16. A school friend of his had a camera and he picked it up to play with it, and I think his fascination and passion just started straight away. The thing that he found to be really interesting with photography was its ability to capture and manipulate light. I mean, that's what it means in its very essence, is to write with light, photograph. Extending that, I think one of the things he always looked for was the humanity in everything he photographed. So that was quite obvious for people and his portrait photography, but also extended to his abstract and landscape stuff. What kind of drew all those things together was his fascination with how a photograph could kind of etch into permanence something as transient as light, and how light moves and affects what we're looking at. I think my dad's background in journalism definitely influenced the way that he photographed, and so I think he absolutely was influenced by the idea of telling a story through photography. And the fact that he studied journalism was also, the context of it is, at the time, as a young white man in Namibia, he was really anti-apartheid and wanted to avoid being conscripted entirely. And so he went on to study and then came back and worked as a freelance journalist and photographer for a few local and international media publications. And he always had a real sense of kind of just and unjust and right and wrong. I think he definitely found that his way of contributing to the liberation movement would be to document the injustice as well as document the liberation movement itself, and show the kind of power of that liberation movement. And that's a lot of what he's remembered for today. My father's work does cover quite a wide range of subject matter, but I think the essence of it all comes from the same place. For me, the way I see his work, and I think how he did as well, was that he tried to essentially see the humanity in every situation that he photographed. And also when it comes to landscapes, he had a real deep connection with particularly the Namibian and Angolan landscapes. And so that kind of human relation to the landscape, I think, is more the subject matter of his landscapes than the landscapes themselves, if that makes sense. And then his abstract photography as well. He kind of, when he photographed in an abstract way, he was always looking for something that had an energy about it, something that kind of had a life of its own. And I think it was also a way of, acknowledging how we relate to everyday objects, or objects that are interesting or unnatural or natural. There's all these different ways that we interact with the world, and the objects around us and the spaces around us, the light around us, are things that have energy themselves, that kind of we interact with. And I think that's what he was trying to capture with abstract photography, was trying to create or show the energy of everyday things. In terms of his time as a photographer during the liberation movement, I think he definitely saw his role as one of having responsibility. I think particularly with the place of privilege that he occupied at the time, as a white man in Namibia, he absolutely was aware of the power dynamics at play. I think he felt that his contribution to the movement would be to not only show what was happening in terms of his journalism for media corporations, but also to document the Namibian struggle for independence in a way that would, knowingly form an archive for future, with the optimism that, Namibia would achieve independence, being part of making sure that we remembered what it took to get there, and how that was achieved. There is one photograph of my dad's that I grew up with. It was always in our house growing up, and it's an image of taken at a Red Cross refugee site in either northern Namibia or southern Angola, and it's of a young man reading a letter. And that image always stuck with me because it was really, taken back in the day with film photography, and so, it has that look about it, and shows this quite intense sadness, but also a real human connection. And it was only later on that I found out that the letter that the person in the photograph was reading was a letter telling him that all of his family members had passed away in the war. So, even without knowing that background, you could really feel in this image that it has a lot of meaning, and it's quite an intense moment. So yeah, that's an image that has always stuck with me. You can find my dad's work on Startup Gallery's website, so www.startupgallery.com. That has loads of different photographs on there. We're constantly updating them as well. I think something that my dad would be remembered for is his fascination with light, because he was always, quite literally talking about where light comes from. If you're sitting and watching a movie with him, he was always trying to figure out where they were lighting it from. And I think his fascination with how natural light worked, how we could manipulate light, how you could convey light in different ways. His ideas of light not only extended quite literally, but also through, seeing the light in everything, being quite optimistic. And he certainly took that optimism throughout his life, right up to when he passed away, and that's something that I think he'd be remembered for.